Mr. Moulton is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you started this hearing by explaining how important it is that we engage in tough questions, and that spirited debate has been a hallmark of this committee's work and a hallmark of our hearings. But I think to accuse people with the record of service of our 3 witnesses this morning of not caring is a bit beyond the pale. Now, as members of the administration, you have also been accused of so-called zombie diplomacy, which is to say you're meeting with Chinese officials with no goals in mind. To quote our chairman, the siren song of engagement invariably leads to appeasement in the face of foreign aggression. This would come as quite shocking news to any fan of Ronald Reagan or student of US-Soviet relations and arms control. Indeed, conservatives in the 1980s made some of these same accusations against the Reagan administration when the president decided to engage in arms discussions with the Soviets. Now, we have been briefed as a committee about critical communications senior US military leaders have had with their Chinese counterparts to reinforce our deterrent posture. I'd like to ask our witnesses if there is any additional value beyond communicating our clear deterrent to engaging in any diplomacy, or for that matter, simply communication with our Chinese counterparts, our Chinese government officials. Honorable Crittenbrang-Props, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Respectfully, I would just say we have pursued these diplomatic engagements with China from a position of confidence and strength. Based on the last 2.5 years of work in this administration, building our sources of strength at home, the unprecedented work we've done to strengthen our allied and partner relationships in the region. And from that position, we're quite confident in engaging with the Chinese. We've done so, mostly, sir, as you indicated, to make sure that we have channels of communication so we don't risk a miscalculation that could veer into conflict. It is a valuable way to convey very directly our concerns. These engagements are often tense. They're rarely pleasant. They are extremely important, however. Other benefits of these engagements, other things that we are striving for, are to pursue limited areas where it's in our national interest to cooperate, whether that be on getting detained Americans released, on reducing the flow of precursor chemicals that are used to synthesize fentanyl and synthetic opioids, and a range of other issues. And I would also argue, Mr. Congressman, that our allies and partners are standing with us in an unprecedented way, but they're also worried about the risk of conflict and miscalculation, and they are reassured to know that at a minimum, there are open channels of communication between.
Now, sir, you just used the word unprecedented again. I'm curious if hearing an American commander-in-chief tell Xi Jinping that we love each other was unprecedented or not.
Congressman, I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Well, under the previous administration, the President of the United States said after a meeting with Xi Jinping at Davos that we love each other. Was that unprecedented?
I see. I'm not sure how to respond to that, sir. I would simply say our approach is to be very clear-eyed and tough when we engage with our Chinese counterparts, and I can guarantee you.
Thank you very much for your professionalism. Mr. Ratner, could you, or Dr. Ratner, could you comment on this as well? Is there any value that you seek from DOD in engaging with Chinese government officials in carrying out diplomacy?
Congressman, Secretary Austin has been very clear since the beginning of the administration that the department is interested in open lines of communication with the PRC. Unfortunately, by and large, they have not responded to those requests. We do see value in particular instances with very clear eyes about the realities of those exchanges. For one, we want to be able to communicate with the PRC during crises. For instance, after we shot down their spy balloon, the Secretary requested a call with his counterpart, which was not taken, but that would have been a valuable time to be able to explain our intentions.
It's a great example, and I'm going to interrupt just because I'm running out of time. Ms. Kendler, you may have to take this for the record, but we as a committee have heard reporting and analysis of how much trouble the Chinese economy is in. We've also heard a lot of anecdotal reports of Chinese business leaders trying to leave the country. For the record, if you could give us some idea of how we might capitalize on that, use that as leverage to our advantage, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As the gentleman knows, the sequencing, of course, matters. Reagan, of course, built up hard power prior to engaging at Reykjavik and in other fora. He was also willing to wage ideological warfare aggressively against the Soviet Union, which is an absence of our current strategy. So I just would say, since I was invoked, that détente without a credible military deterrent is like music without instruments. But Mr. Newhouse is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.